everybody. We're glad that you're here on a Saturday afternoon. It's Saturday, I think, with a beautiful weather outside. So I appreciate that you're staying inside, or maybe you're outside and watching this. But and I'm really glad that Dezjorn, you've made time to be here today. That you're missing out on your beautiful Saturday too. So just to kind of welcome us into this space, I wanted to just let folks know that. I'm Michael Munson with Forge, and this afternoon, Dezjorn is our guest, and he's going to talk about lots of really cool things, and we're going to go on a fun journey together. And I'm not sure where we're all going to go, but it'll be a really good time. So today, as folks know, is like the second to last day of Black Trans History Month, or Black History Month. But as we all know, Black Trans History doesn't end at the end of February. It goes on forever and ever, and the creation of new history goes on forever and ever. So even though it's February, we're going to continue on with that, honoring and remembering all of our community and the importance of Black trans leaders. So for folks that might not be familiar with Forge, let me just give you the thumbnail sketch. We are a national trans anti-violence organization that predominantly works with victim service providers, but also with supporting trans survivors of victimization and crime and trauma. And then in Wisconsin, we do work around advocacy with and for trans folks, some programming like this, as well as education, information, and connecting people to resources. So some of you have probably heard me say this already, but right now we're in listen-only mode. So you can hear me and you can hear Dezjorn in a few minutes. And nobody can turn on their camera yet, just so that we can all focus all of our attention on the beautiful, wonderful, brilliant Dezjorn for the next however long it's gonna last. So I would love if we could start with an opening question. So this is a surprise to Dezjorn because, it's just a surprise. It's good to have surprises. So we're going to start with an opening question that we can do in chat. And just a reminder before we do that, that if you would like to pin anybody so that you can always see them, like our ASL interpreters, you can go up to those little 3 dots next to their name and pin them, or pin Dezjorn, or pin whoever is on screen that you'd like to make sure that you see all the time. So I'm wondering if in the chat we could type, you could type your name if you'd like, if it's not already associated with your login, and what item of clothing or accessory makes you feel your absolute best. So I'm just going to give folks a few minutes, and Dezjorn's going to get the rev up. Glitter shawl, suits. Some boots, yep. So what things make you feel your absolute best? Hat and shoes for sure, yep. Cool. SpongeBob and Pride apparel. That is cool. That's fantastic. Cool. Keep on flowing if you'd like to keep flowing in the chat. Let me introduce Dezjorn, who I've known for a few years. I don't remember how long it's been, but we've kind of crossed paths for many years. And I have known him to be an excellent leader in our community, both here in Milwaukee as well as across the country, and a very snappy dresser, who is how I introduce him to everybody. Is like, he's a snappy dresser, he's going to look really good, but there's a good brain behind the looking good as well. So I'm going to let you share more about who you are, but just to give folks a picture, a little teeny picture. You do philanthropic work, really caring about bringing awareness to trans communities, specifically trans men of color, through all of those good things like education and empowerment and inspiration. And a lot of us see you and your brand around a lot. So it's really fun to be able to have a conversation with you and to hear what you have to share with folks that we may not know about you. So thank you for being here today. And I'm going to turn off my camera so you can have it.
All right, thank you. And I really appreciate it. What's crazy is that we have known each other for a longer period of time, I think, than we even think we did, because, Forge was a organization that was there for me as I first began my transition, so even kind of, behind the curtain, I still had support from Forge. So that's what's really cool there. And with Forge being in my home city, I think that's what really connected us. So that's awesome. And I love doing things with Forge. And you all can find me doing something with Forge moving forward. So I really want to take the time here to acknowledge the fact that Forge is actually really the first place, person, however you want to put it, organization to actually ask me or allow me to kind of have this platform, which probably is shocking for the fact that I have been in some very well known and top magazines, dealt with a lot of major brands, had a lot of major interviews. But a lot of times those questions or those interviews are very specific to what they're asking. And there really is no background of, how did Dezjorn come about? Um, and I think it's very important because I am considered a public figure. I'm considered an internationally known model, and all of these things. And there's very, very few Black trans male models. And so, again, this may be shocking because it's shocking to me that this is, when I sat back and thought about it, I said, well, okay, wow, this is actually the first time. So this is very exclusive content in a way that a lot of you are receiving. Um, and I want to begin with the fact of how Michael mentioned, my brand or my logo is seen or kind of known everywhere across the country. And it's ironic because it started off actually through modeling. Little do people know. And it's now grown into a giant conglomerate firm, meaning that I have multiple businesses under that. I have kind of transformed into this entrepreneur. And again, kind of setting these record tones there, as well as a Black trans man, being one of few that hold a conglomerate firm, and making multiple businesses open and available for our community. And so I think that right there within itself also is really great. But let's take it back. I started modeling back when I was 6 months. So literally a baby, like fresh out of the womb. And I have been modeling ever since. I had a few years off that were in between there. And part of that is because I was actually finding my identity. And a lot of folks ask me, well, okay, so how did that work? When you transitioned, what happened with agencies, what happened with gigs, like just everything. And, it's interesting because actually a lot changed, but at the same time, a lot didn't. And this is what I mean by that. In the fashion industry, and a lot of folks know this, especially those of you that potentially have, tried to get into modeling or are very interested in getting into modeling. It's very difficult and it's very competitive. It is a very competitive industry. And we know this, especially within our community, because we know that there are standards that are just not realistic. And brands and companies do all that they can to try to make these unrealistic things walk across the runway and be representation. And we know that, again, like I keep saying, it's unrealistic. Our community is really kind of hit the hardest for that, because again, there are these things that, we're finding ourselves, we're creating definitions of ourselves, we're defining beauty. And then here we are having these big high fashion brands that are in the spotlight also trying to define what beauty is at the same time. And so even at a very young age, I was doing key modeling gigs with McDonald's, Popeye's Chicken, Kohl's Department Store, which is here in the Midwest. I did Coca-Cola. I did Huggies as well. I was one of the Huggies babies. Like, I was on like the Pamper box, or I should say the Huggies box. Let me not confuse the brands there. And with that being said, again, I've been in the limelight, and my mother was a huge advocate here an activist as well in Milwaukee, Wisconsin with the NAACP, fighting for equality, fighting for civil rights, and so forth. And I, again, became a forefront youth image. I had been in the Milwaukee Journal Sentinel. I had been in Shepherd's Express. I had been in other small little local blogs and newspapers, especially way back then. A lot of things were just newspapers. And I did a lot with a place called Career Youth Development, known as CYD. They do still exist today. They don't do as much, and there has been a lot of changing kind of their path of what they do. But it was a nonprofit organization here in Milwaukee that really pushed for equality and having youth basically get off of the streets. Um, and I became a youth representative and leader. So I was always sitting down with our mayor and politicians, folks of different districts here throughout the state of Wisconsin. And it was always basically within my blood. And that's kind of how my public speaking came about and me being able to carry myself very well. And I did all of this with my female pronouns and identifying as female at the time. I still was very masculine, but with that being said, I knew that something just was not right. Something just was not fitting in. And I started telling people that when I would do modeling gigs, when I would do pageantry, when I would do public speaking, that it just felt like a job to me. I loved what I did, but it felt like a job. And the reason for that is because I was not my authentic self. I was putting on dresses and diamonds and pearls and getting all dialed up, but that's not what I really wanted to do as far as what I wanted to wear. My attire did not match what I felt internally, what I felt mentally, what I felt emotionally. It did not match. And again, I remind you, I love what I did. Okay. I was advocating, I was helping other teens not be involved with drugs or be in the street, staying in school and all of that. And so it was fun to me. And I got a lot of speaking gigs, commercials, and things like that. As I got into high school and the internet became a thing, I was able to do a lot more research. And of course, the term transgender came up, and I then knew exactly what was going on and how I needed to identify. And in the modeling world, may I tell you, trans folks definitely exist, and we've been existing for decades, and we all know this. However, it was a new time period in the fashion world when it came to the term transgender. And this is right around that time now. So now I'm kind of getting into college. And this was around the time when we seen Laverne Cox out. Janet Mock was really pushing a lot of her writings and her speaking engagements as well. And this is when Barney's New York came about. And it was 2014. And this is kind of when that big 360 came for the trans world, just in general, that this is when we were in the media. People wanted to know more. What is the term? Who are they? What do they look like? What do they do? Like, it was like this new thing, although we have literally been around forever. And the fashion industry had no idea what to do. And like I said, we've been there. There's a lot of us that have been on that runway, but they may not have disclosed that they were trans. They definitely probably did not disclose that they were, and if they did, the companies and the organizations did not want to disclose that that's what those models were. I made sure that I was going to be someone that broke that glass ceiling. I wanted folks to know that I identified as trans. And the reason for that was because representation matters. I knew that when I grew up, I could not find someone on a magazine that looked like me. Now, they may have looked, air quote, like me, but I wanted to know that they understood or felt what I felt. But there was no way to know that unless someone disclosed or said that they identified as trans. And so I wanted to make sure that I was one of those people. And I was out, and I came out to the world. Okay, so I didn't just come out to my mom. I think we talked about this before in a different Forge event that we had. I didn't just, come out the closet real average. And really, there is no average. So excuse me on that. There is no average way to come out, but I did not have just an average type story. I definitely had a very different story. And that story was I was being published in Vogue, Vanity Fair, having headline news from CNN all the way to BuzzFeed to New York Times. And I had not disclosed to anyone else in my like private internal bubble that I was trans. And so the media disclosed that for me and basically opened the closet door for me. And I was okay with that because I allowed it. Okay, this is something that I did give permission to, as we all know. And I like to remind that safety is always important, and you want to ask people before you disclose. And I know a lot of us here in this room right now probably do understand that. But again, I always like to make sure that I say that out loud. And so the media had permission to do all of this, okay? And as I went through my modeling career now as a trans man, I started to realize that there was a lot of things that were different. And it wasn't just because I identified as male, okay? It was literally because I was trans. Here's why. My height requirement now was something completely different than what it was before. My poses that I had been training since 6 months, so 20 something years, were now different. Okay. The way that the light hit my skin, or the curls in my hair, because as you know, with hormones, a lot of those things can change, right? I had more acne. I was going through puberty all over again, right? So different makeups we had to go through, and all of these different changes that were happening were also affecting my job as a model. So I had to retrain myself. And one of the things I always like to talk about is how when it came down to poses, I actually had to retrain myself how to stand tall. So to roll my shoulders back. And the reason for that is because for about 2 decades, I wanted to hide my chest. So my shoulders became curved. Um, I was binding safely. And I was afraid to show my chest, right? And before I had top surgery, I still was doing major gigs. So Barney's, New York, I hadn't had top surgery yet. Okay, I was in a binder. I was binding in that image that we see floating across the internet with Aya Taylor. Um, I literally was, I had to retrain myself to roll my shoulders back and not be afraid to represent exactly who I was. So just in case there was a kid on the other side looking and being like, hey, is that a binder that he has under there? Or wait a minute, this person has breasts? Oh, okay. So it's okay. Yes, it's okay. And I then had to go to casting calls and literally argue with the casting team of how my height and my build did not affect my job and I could still do it well. I had received so many no's. And I tell the story a lot of times to my models and my talent management, which I'll get to in a second, is you will always hear no. And this is a thing just in life in general. And in the fashion industry, you will get it. But don't be afraid that that no is coming because you're trans. Prove them wrong. That's exactly what I did. I have been on major runway platforms like Marco for New York Fashion Week only at 5'7". I'm heavier now thanks to COVID, but prior to, I was sitting at about 125 pounds As you can see, I'm very small build. Okay, I'm not super buff. Um, and I was not matching the criterias that a lot of the brands wanted. But I walked in that door and I told them that representation mattered, not only as a Black person, but as a trans person, and then both being combined. And in that era, a lot of the brands and the companies were starting to realize that. They were starting to see that we need to have all types of representation. We've seen a lot of the underwear models now having no shame with plus size models. We've seen an increase of that. We've seen an increase of Black models in general. We've seen an increase of those that were potentially in wheelchairs or have other challenges throughout their lives, but we now seen them as the face of companies. We now seen brands making special alternatives for different body types and different challenges that we see throughout our lives in general. And this was very important to me to keep going. But I still could not get on the cover of a magazine. It was always a challenge. It was always, but, or, well, what if? There was always something. So I said, look, I'm done waiting. What I'll do is I'll create my own magazine and I'll put myself on the cover. And then I'll start putting more trans people on the cover because I can do that. And that's exactly what I did when I created Black Tea Magazine. Then the next thing that happened was I realized that talent management, model agencies didn't know how to deal with me. And there's a lot of my brothers and sisters that were coming back telling me the exact same thing. We became a price tag for a lot of agencies, a lot of brands. It wasn't that they actually wanted to help. It was that, oh, this is a hot trending topic. So let's go ahead and use trans people. So what ended up happening is I started saying, let me run you my resume. Let me tell you who I am, because I'm sorry, this is something that I cannot and will not do for free. And I stood on my ground. Now, there were some things that I did do for free, either A, because I personally wanted to volunteer, or maybe that brand or company honestly was really out here trying to make a change in the world, or B, it was because I knew the only way that I would be able to get my foot in the door to create space for more of my family members was that I would have to take the free gig. And I was okay with me taking it rather than someone else taking it. And I use that scenario all the time, you know, as a public figure. I like to say, you know, I like to take the sticks and the stones because I have all of my trans babies behind me. And I'm okay with that. And so that was what I was doing. I was okay with taking the hatred and taking the no's, taking the less paid gigs if it was a need be. And now we start to see that changing. And there's more of us that are standing up, especially in the acting world. We see Brian out. We see Angelica Ross in Pose. You know, we see there's a lot. There's more than that as well. Lath as well, representing for our Latinx culture and things like that. And more of us are pushing and pushing and pushing because representation matters. And so then I created my own talent management because I honestly was just tired of dealing with things that folks just didn't understand. They didn't understand when going to a casting call or being on site for a gig. My dressing room could not be shared with someone else. Or it could be shared with someone else, but I wasn't going to tolerate any hatred that would be going against me or any weird questions or, you know, or even pushing me into a space like I had to be by myself, you know. So again, kind of was a give or take depending on, you know, location and casting and things like that. But it was something where I had to, again, be like, this is not okay. And I will create it myself and I will help represent my family members so that we can get paid good compensation, so that our travel is paid, so that we have nice hotel rooms, so that we have a dressing room of our own, and so forth, just like everybody else. We shouldn't be treated any different. And so every single time, no matter what I was doing, not only was I representing, making sure that our youth could see someone that looked like them or knew that someone like them did exist, but I also wanted to make sure that I was paving the way, to change the way the fashion industry worked, the way that talent management worked. Um, and then here we are, today, where again, I am one of the few Black trans men that have been in Vogue, Vanity Fair, BuzzFeed, New York Times. Um, can't even remember all of them. Um, I'm really sitting here trying to remember. Those are like the ones I always remember because I just repeatedly say them. But there's a whole bunch more. I mean, you can throw my name in on Google, and you'll see all of the things that come up. And the crazy part about it is if you simply type in Black trans male model, or Black male model, you won't see me. I think you have to go like 3 pages in. And it's crazy because I've been hashtagged, and all of the marketing aspects have been there, but it's just there's so little of us. Our pool is so tiny that we just don't quite pop up, and I don't just quite pop up yet. But I have had my fair share. In the pageantry world as well, same thing. Um, a lot of folks didn't know how to deal with it. They didn't know what category I was supposed to go into because my gender marker hadn't been changed. Had to kind of push buttons on that. I've done a lot of pageantry, especially as a female. I did less as male because it wasn't as common. What we did see more of is in the queer world, right? We would see more of the male pageantries being present. And I definitely had fun with that. But there are definitely way more experienced people in that area. And I kind of just stepped back and let it be, not in a bad way, but I love watching what the experienced folks that have been doing pageantry for decades, within the queer world. Um, there's like sparkle pageantry things, there's leather, there's a whole bunch, like literally every genre you could think of. There is a pageant for it, in the queer world. And we know that we definitely we create our own space for sure. Like we know that. And so I think it's really cute, and I thought it was awesome. I usually host an annual pageant as well. I had a really nice pageant that was kind of getting ready to launch, and then of course COVID happened. And so I'm hoping after we can gather back together as a normal gathering, I would love to have that pageant open back up. um, and then I also got pretty hooked on the ballroom scene. And now, as far as ballroom goes, I don't actually participate in ballroom, as far as like being part of a house and walking and things of that nature. I do have my own house called the Royal House of Dezjorn. And again, it's just to welcome family members in, those folks that feel they don't have a home, don't have parents, don't have siblings, don't have that support system. That's where ballroom came in. That's the history of it. And of course, there are the ballroom scenes that, things like Pose, and other, voguing and things like that we have seen on TV, or if you've done your research or on YouTube, if you follow those. That was the original history of it. It was taking care of our community, when our biological families would let us go. And so I do have my own house. I have a few house members. We're always looking, we're always accepting, open to everyone. And when I do ballroom, I do them in smaller events, a lot of houses or legendary ballroom scenes like to just call me a legendary spectator, because that is exactly what I am. I like to go for the socialization part of it. And just meeting everyone and just being a part of the culture is really where I stand as far as ball goes. I have had several houses ask and things like that, but as far as the competition, it's just not my thing. Like I said, I like to watch more than I do like to compete, but I have done a couple, and I will if if it just kind of floats my boat, or every once in a while, someone's like, oh, you can't do it. They kind of tease me about it or whatever, and I'll go ahead and walk. I do have a couple of trophies. I've done schoolboy realness, transman realness. I've done face. I'm trying to think what else. Runway, I've done runway as well. So there's multiple categories in ballroom. There's a lot of different ones, and literally, again, we get very creative. And what you simply do is you will get in costume or in character for that, and you would walk that category, and it's competitive with whomever else is walking with you. And like when I say competitive, I mean competitive. There are folks that literally train. Some of you may know there are actual professional voguers. And so that's literally what they do. They train to vogue. And there's different types of vogue, and there's different turns, and there's things that I don't even know, but there's a whole bunch of different things when it comes down to just that category. So you can imagine some of the other categories. There's other things as well that the houses train their members on when it comes to walking the ballroom scene. But I love going to them. If you haven't been to one, I highly suggest that you go. It's really cool. It's awesome to see something that has been around that, keeps the queer community together. It's part of our history and part of our culture. And I think it's really cool. Trying to think what else. I think, Michael, if we can, I'd love to open it up for questions if people actually have questions. Because I know I probably missed some things in there. Like I said, it's something I'm very used to, like I talk about, but a lot, I feel like I'm now prompted, like I'm trained to just have a question because that's what I'm so used to at this point.
And as people are thinking about their questions, let me ask you a starter question to maybe get things rolling. Can you talk about the difference between pageants and balls?
Yes. So pageantry is something that it is literally kind of like what you see on TV as well. Where you have swimwear. Sometimes there might be a speaking section. Not every pageant does have a speaking section, just FYI. So when you watch Miss America and things like that, not every pageant does have an actual Q&A part to it, but a lot of them do. And then when it comes down to ballroom, again, ballroom is a historical thing that is part of a culture where it is involving different house members. And some people are not part of houses either, by the way. They can freely walk. And there's different categories, like I said, where you kind of get into character. And in pageantry, again, there's categories, but there's not really a getting into character except for maybe your talent section that might really involve character. But yeah, very two different things, two different feels as well. Two different type of audiences in the ballroom scene. Your audience is literally your floor, right? Some of the bigger legendary ballroom scenes do have levitated, higher stages, runway platforms. But a lot of times it's in the same shared space that the audience is standing in. Also, the competitors can come out of nowhere with ballroom. So you don't know who actually, is walking, may not be walking. And when I say walking, I mean participating. For those of you that for terminology. So, again, I can be there as a spectator, but all of a sudden I'm like, oh, they're doing schoolboy realness, and I got my little backpack too. Boom, and they'll start a countdown, and I'll hop in to go ahead and walk. So there's not like a sign up sheet or anything that you have to do. Whereas with pageantry, there is a sign up. Sometimes there's a fee, an application fee and things like that. There's prizes for both as well. A lot of times there's trophies for both. Of course, there's those title holders for both, right? We have like the House of Extravaganza that we see in Pose. There's the House of Chanel, right? These key houses that a lot of us may know or may have heard of before in the queer world. And they hold those titles because they've been known for what they do. We have houses that are known for, hand, right? Houses that are known for face, kind of like, sororities and fraternities, right? May have different things that they're known for. And so the ballroom scene and houses as well kind of have that as well. They might have titles and things that they hold and protect, right? And then, in the pageantry world, yes, you do have your titles, your reigning titles. And a lot of time there's some advocacy that comes along with that, community service that comes along with that. With me being Mr. Black Trans Wisconsin, there are certain things that I have to do with that title. So I have to have so many community service hours. There's certain events that it's not that I have to show up, but I would look real bad if I did not show up and was not present there with my sash on. And that, again, is not just for our trans or queer pageants. That's kind of a thing for any pageant. That's just a requirement as well. You'll see that community service and that public speaking and fundraising and things like that being involved as well.
Cool. It looks like we have one question so far. So what advice would you give a young trans person or a young person, teen of trans experience about being proud of who they are in community that may feel less welcoming?
Yes. So very good question. And I'm glad that you brought that up as well. And the thing is, always be you. Always be you. I know that there are spaces that are not welcoming. And if in that moment you feel that it is not going to be safe for you, then okay, okay, please, by all means, always be safe. Okay. Your life matters. Your life matters to me. I know you may not know me. I know there's thousands of youth out there that don't know me, but I will tell you right now that the lives of anyone matter to me. And again, in those unwelcoming spaces, make sure safety is there first. And if not, or excuse me, if it is, if you're okay and you're like, okay, this is safe, I can be me, but I'm still a little bit hesitant, it's okay. It's okay. Think about maybe your first time you had to do a presentation in school, right? You were probably terrified, even if you were someone that is good at public speaking and are very articulate or anything. We still get butterflies. I have been speaking for decades, okay, and I have been in front of big bodies of people. I have been in front of people that do not like me at all. I honestly remember a time that I spoke at a predominantly all-white school, and they called themselves being diverse, bringing me on, and they did not do a very good job at their advertisement of who I was and what I was talking about. And they did not display a picture of me. And so my name can be a little bit deceiving, I guess. And so you can only imagine how interesting that was on that stage and in that room of about 100 people. And with that being said, though, I didn't hesitate on what I wanted to say, but I definitely had butterflies. I definitely had butterflies. And with that being said, you have no idea how you can change the world, or you don't know who else in that room was feeling what you were feeling. And you, as a teen or as a kid coming out, our teens and our youth are more powerful than me. Okay. I'm almost 30, and nothing against our 30-year-olds out there, right? Or anyone in that little classification, but our youth today are doing amazing things at the age of 6, at the age of 10, and they're out saying that they're trans. Okay. They are literally changing laws, they are changing policies, they are doing incredible things. And so my advice is keep that in mind. And if you can't, trust me, there is someone out there that is already kind of public, is maybe already doing the work, and share those stories. I always listen when I go to conferences, especially to my teens and my youth. I hear what they have to say because I know they're telling it to me because they know that I can vocalize that for them. I never share someone's story, without permission and things like that. So no confusion there. But what I'm saying is, I would not be who I am on the platforms that I have without literally the hundreds and thousands of stories of elders and teens and youth that shared their story with me, when they were afraid, when they did not know what to say, when there was an unwelcoming moment that they were in, and how to express that. An example of that is, name tags, having us put our pronouns on name tags. A lot of that came from folks that were in unwelcoming spaces and did not know what to say. And it finally took, folks that are in the position to be like, can we like fix this? You know what I mean? And now, especially now, we see it's very common for that to be done. We see a lot of people even now on Zoom adding it right in to their title when they go ahead and type, and we see that being put in. And so, yeah, always be you. And if you can't, internally always be you, and feel free to express someone to someone that you can confide in and that is safe and things like that, to maybe help you be able to express what that is to get those changes done.
That's really cool. And as we wait for other questions to roll in, I'd love to ask a kind of a secondary or follow-up question to that. So, Dezjorn, it sounds like you have a supportive family,
Yes.
um, which is fantastic, and a lot of us do. And you also have connection to a house, your own, and knowing of others. And I think that, when I look at this question, I think about, I think we think that houses are only for people that have been kicked out of their house, that don't have supportive families. But like what I just heard you say was like, it's important for us to tell our stories to people. It's important to feel heard and validated,
Mhm.
regardless of whether we have a family of origin to go to. And I'm just wondering if you could share like maybe what are some of the benefits of having multiple places to be you?
Yes. And I like how you put that too, like having multiple places. And um, with that being said, is like, I have multiple places for me to be me, right? I do have a supportive family, and my wife is very supportive and has been with me through my transition. My kids are supportive. Sometimes I don't even think they know what's going on, but either way, you get my point. My dad is. My mom was a little bit borderline, and if anyone ever wants to learn more about that, there is a documentary with America in Transition, that literally kind of tells that story, and how we came about actually being supportive before she ended up passing away. Um, but with that being said, yeah, fraternities and sororities, houses, clubs, any of those things are very, very important. We are sociable, humans. Like that's what we're here to do. We are meant to socialize. And we are meant to find our spaces that we fit in. And it may take trial and error. It may take several times, but it is very important. And the reason for that is because one safe space may not understand something that's going on, whereas the other one would. And what I mean by that is because when I started getting a lot more into my entrepreneur side of things and my business started growing and I started getting a renovation company, which is like completely like over here, right? And I got busier and busier and busier. The one area that, I had comfort and safety and support started to fall apart because I did not have a group of entrepreneurs that I could connect with. So here again, I found myself being in a space where I felt like I did not have anyone. I felt like no one understood, right? Like my wife is not an entrepreneur, right? She's a mom and she's a teacher and we're foster parents and things like that. But like finances and entrepreneurship and like all of that goes like right over her head. And it's not that she doesn't want to listen. It's just, it's a thing that she doesn't get it, you know? My dad doesn't get it. Even some of my house members, they just don't get it, right? But it came that I then found a group of Black trans entrepreneurs and we can share our ideas and bounce our ideas around. And I felt welcomed and they understood. It's the same things that we see on Facebook when we go into these little groups, right? Maybe before surgery, having these surgery groups, or how we identify and we are in those groups to discuss things, right? Because those people understand. And houses, like Michael mentioned, are not just because you got kicked out of, your actual home or your biological parents, kicked you out. Historically, kind of the foundation of that is where that kind of came from. But as we fast forward now today, oh, it has absolutely nothing to do with that. Houses now, I mean, people, literally have a house and are living with their loved ones and very supportive and things like that, but they also are part of a house and they take on that house's name, and things like that. You might see someone's last name as Chanel or Extravaganza, Versace, like you see that as a last name, because that is just where they find themselves being the most supportive. It is not that their actual household is not supportive. It's just that that household maybe understands them a little bit more. And again, like I said, some of it has to do with competition, right? And so they want folks to know which house they're a part of. Think of it like a sports team. You kind of wear your gear, right? But like I said, these houses are open for all different types of people, and they have specific things sometimes that they're known for, like I said. And so people will join that house because that's what they want to be good at, or that's what they want to be known for when they walk with that house. There's houses for our chocolate skinned trans women, and it's specifically for them. It doesn't mean that they won't accept anyone else. It's just that house is known to have, chocolate, dark, melanin in their house. And so someone that identifies that way would automatically maybe go and be like, okay, this is the house that I want to go to. A lot of times I tell people, think of kind of like fraternities and sororities, where they can definitely accept other folks, right? But certain ones may be known, like in the Divine Nine, our AKAs are known, right? And we know from this past election, right, about the pearls and things like that with AKAs. And it doesn't mean, oh my God, I don't own a set of pearls, so I can't be an AKA. No, you know what I mean? But if that is your thing and there's other, secret things that go along with sororities and fraternities and things like that, that if you fall in line with that, that fraternity and sorority may be for you. And there's a lot of house members that are a part of fraternities and sororities, and we do have our own. For trans men, there's several different fraternities for us. I've had several of them try to reach out to me too, and I'm just like, it's not my thing. But and they'll reach out to you. That's the thing. They will reach out to you because they see you, right? They see that you fit into whatever they are, right? And they see that you fit in. And it's important to have, the multiple areas of support. And that's just as a human being. It has nothing to do with being trans. It has nothing, to do with being queer, anything like that. but everyone should have, you know, multiple streams of support. I'm usually saying multiple streams of income, right? But, you know, multiple streams of support. Honestly, it's good for your health to have different areas of different people that you can talk to that understand you, or be able to help you achieve goals and your aspirations and things like that throughout life.
That's really cool. So we're still waiting for more folks to come in. Actually, Lori just asked a question, which is great. So let's go with that. I heard you and your wife are foster parents. Were you out when you got accepted as foster parents? Were there any problems?
Oh, I love it. Thank you for that question. I was out. So I've been out since 2013, 14. Okay. Publicly to the world. It was like 2014. And I've always known literally since I was like 5 years old, like what was going on. But yeah, so before we became foster parents, we've been foster parents 3, maybe 4 years. I've lost count. Also because of COVID, you know, COVID year doesn't count. So that kind of throws me off every time I try to do years. But yes, we were out. And here's the thing with me. I can't even hide that I'm trans anymore because we know nowadays, you know, people do background checks and they will type your name in Google and all this other stuff. And well, I pop up on Google. So with that being said, even if I wanted to kind of hide it, it's not really a thing for me, which again, I am okay with. And with that being said, uh, here, so we go through the children's hospital here. Those of you that are from Wisconsin, I'm assuming a lot of you are on the call, and they love us. Oh my gosh. And the reason for that goes kind of back to what I was saying earlier. They now have someone that they can come to. So I will tell you this, Lori, and it's again, I'm so glad that you asked this question because I have not had a chance to talk about this. So I feel like I can now vent about it. But I would sit in our trainings. Okay. So foster parents go through like these excessive trainings, right? And they're great. There's a lot of good knowledge and all of that stuff. No hard feelings there. However, when it came to them talking about a trans person, a trans child in foster care, you can bet I was that person that said, oh, excuse me, that is incorrect. That is inaccurate. And I was very quick to call them out. I had no shame in my game at all. And soon as I started doing that, it became very apparent to them that they might want to ask first. Of course, by no means I ever said, you know, I'm an expert in this, you know, or anything like that. However, I always, you know, told them, you know, you should probably ask before you post that, or you should probably put in here that they should ask the child that question for, you know, or something like that. And now we are kind of their brand ambassadors. There's several different things, but every time they have a survey, it's like they make sure that they ask us, because they do want to include the trans community. They do want to kind of make sure that they have someone available. Again, if we didn't have COVID, we would have been out and about at a lot of the different events that we know happen here in Wisconsin, you know, Summerfest, State Fair, things like that. We would be at the tables and things like that for them. They've been wanting to do kind of like additional training as well with us. You know, just so that we'd represent them properly and things like that. But yeah, it has been fun. It has also been a challenge, you know, as we get different children in our home. We are considered a treatment home, meaning we are one of the higher level of for foster care for home. So we can get kids with ADHD, a lot of medications, you know, everything. We're pretty much open for everyone, but we are a higher level. And with that being said, you know, we have to not only deal with the challenges of the child, but then there's also a lot of times we'll have them kind of, they'll be like, wait a second, wait, what is that? You know, and again, the reason for it is kids will Google my name. You know, they'll be like, let me see who my foster dad is, and then they'll be like, whoa. Or I would travel a lot and they'd be like, well, what do you do? And I would like, diversity and inclusion. Like I would never really disclose what it was. But then, you know, it'd end up coming out to them. Same thing when I was teaching, because I'm also a teacher too. I was kind of applauded on that several times, just because I have a lot of parents and students that had one set kind of tone towards trans people. And all of a sudden I'd be like, oh, that's interesting because you know someone that's trans. And they go, no, I don't. And it, I'm like, yeah, you do. It's me, Professor G. And all of a sudden they go, oh, and it's like their whole world changes because, I'm kind of like the cool professor, the awesome teacher, the relaxed teacher. And then all of a sudden, their whole world changes because of that. And again, that's just part of my goal that I have in life, is things like that. So sometimes I don't disclose, even though I know people can Google me. I will kind of just keep my mouth shut so that they can see me for me, fall in love for me. And then all of a sudden I go, and by the way, I'm trans, which is one of the least interesting things about me. And it changes their kind of outlook on the trans community. And I've had a lot of people actually, start going to trans events or donating to trans organizations and things like that, because for a lot of years, they kind of had this false, image of us, and talk down or bad about us. And then all of a sudden they realized that we literally are normal and we're just like anybody else. We're human. And it's fun though. It is really fun being a foster parent. It's very fun being a teacher, and having those moments. So thank you, Lori, for that question.
And that's really cool because it's great to fall in love with people, and then you go, not a surprise, but like, guess what? And that's a really great way to get people to feel things in a different way. So really cool.
Exactly.
So someone else is asking, any advice for those that are struggling with their gender identity? That's a nice broad question to go from.
Yeah. And Jay, we can totally talk about this offline too, since I know you. But you are going to go through challenges and struggle with it. It actually is very normal to do that. Okay. Scientifically, it is normal to do that. We are supposed to go through that. They may not put that out there to the world, but it is scientifically proven that we are supposed to go through these things where we are supposed to find our identity, and gender identity being one of them. And my advice for that is do your research. There's so many different ways to identify. Okay, trans is just one of them. Our spectrum is huge. Okay, our umbrella is big. There's a lot of different ways. And then also knowing that there is a difference between sexual orientation and gender identity, and knowing that there's a difference between those two as well. Sometimes our younger folks will, anybody, I shouldn't even just say younger folks, anyone kind of will confuse those two and not realize that they are separate, and you can identify in multiple different ways. And it's totally okay to change back and forth between ones. I know several people that started out being identifying as trans, and then also went to non-binary. I know folks that identified, as far as sexual orientation, being gay, then to lesbian, and then, everything in between. And your gender identity can change your sexual orientation because you're now more comfortable. Like, there's so many different aspects that play a role when it comes down to your identity, and your identity as a whole, like as a human being. There's so many different things, and as you go through life, your identity very well may change, and that is okay. That is life. Okay, our experiences, and what we learn changes throughout our course in life. And so that can change maybe who you are or how you identify, because that experience changed throughout life. But like I said, research for sure. The internet is great. However, okay, never just bank on the internet. There's a lot of different conferences as well that are out there, that have folks, that talk about that. Discuss it with your primary physician, discuss it with your therapy or in your therapy sessions and things like that. There's a lot of different activities that can help. And it's okay to be questioning as well, and not know where exactly you identify and where you're at. It's okay to experiment as well and see, is that, is this feeling comfortable? Do I feel now more authentic and who I am? But again, all of that falls back on doing your research, finding those good sources as well, speaking one-on-one with folks as well. You know, even Jay, you can even, you know, email Forge and things like that, and they have different resources as well, that can help you, you know, like I said. So even reaching out to different organizations and being like, hey, this is how I feel. Do you have any programs that deal with this, or other people that identify this way? I'm just trying to see if I fit in here, and finding who I am. And, you know, Forge is always very welcome to everyone nationwide, you know, internationally, whatever, to, you know, be in those spaces with, you know, different groups of people. And then maybe you can see if you fit in, or if that's how you do identify.
Great answer. And Dezjorn, I'm wondering if you could talk. You just mentioned conferences, and I believe I'm almost positive that you've been involved with Black Trans Advocacy
Hmm.
conference, and I'm wondering if you could share a little bit about that conference and that online presence and support networking for folks that may
Yes.
benefit from that.
Yeah, so the Black Trans Advocacy Coalition is predominantly run out of Texas, but it is known nationwide, and they are expanding internationally as well. I do hold the pageantry title for the Black Trans Advocacy Conference for Mr. Black Trans Wisconsin. And with that being said, it it was a gentleman like myself that was like, there's these things that are missing in the world, and Carter Brown came and gathered different Black trans men that identified, you know, they were all just kind of friends and things, and all of a sudden it grew into this giant conference now, literally the only one actually that is present in the United States, where almost every Black trans person, if they can make it there, makes it there. And it is an awesome thing, because it is a space for us, by us, talking about things that affect us. And I have grown my business with them. I have become a sponsor now with them. I have hosted their award ceremony as well. It's a space where you get, air quotes, celebrities like myself present, and being, you know, just very laid back and communicating, you know, with you, and talking and having these conversations that can be very life changing. And it happens one time a year. It's always usually the last week of April, depending on how the calendar falls. Again, we had to kind of forfeit that because of COVID last year. There has not been an announcement this year of exactly what is going to happen, but I feel like pretty much everybody's kind of on their toes, waiting on the CDC and everything like that. Um, However, virtually, there's rooms, there's Facebook groups and things like that. They have little chats like this as well, and small events that do happen occasionally. They are more of an in-person type of thing, so they don't have as much going on like Forge does virtually. You guys converted over very well to being virtual. I know they are working on that aspect of stuff as far as BTech goes. And hopefully this year, you know, we are either able to be in person, or maybe they push it back. A lot of folks have been talking about, you know, not having it because it's an annual retreat. That's a good way to put it. It's like an annual retreat for the Black trans community. They've, you know, really, it's really been taking an emotional and mental toll, as anything, to be honest, since COVID has been. But with that being the only event kind of for our community, it really has hit our community hard on that note.
Yeah, and it's like, I mean, everybody that I know who's gone, it's like, it's the family reunion kind of event
Exactly.
that people feel so supported by everybody that's there, and they really feel encompassed by that. Um, and I just, I wanted to mention too that, for folks, you said if you can afford to get there, I know that every year BTAC has scholarships and ways that people can get there. And they don't, I know I've known Carter for a long time too. And I know he doesn't want anybody to like not be there
Be
because
able
they
to
can't
go,
afford
right.
it. Yeah, so if you want to go, if that feels right to you, you can reach out and they will do their best to try to help you get there financially.
Yeah, and I also host a travel grant as well, actually, through my organization as well.
Cool.
Um, so you can always reach out to me too.
Yeah, excellent. And I know there have been folks from Milwaukee that have gotten scholarships to go, and there's a lot of ways that people can get there, from
For
any part
sure.
of the country. So, which is really cool. Let me ask another question. We've got about 20 minutes or so before we need to close. Um, I was curious about if you think that shows like Pose are realistic. Does that because people, I think sometimes people think, well, TV is TV and real life is real life, and like, where do they cross? And I think a lot of people hear different views about is that life or not?
Right. Um, yes and no. Um, the they do articulate the ballroom scene very well, actually. The drama that happens with ballroom is is definitely true. I mean, as anything is with the media, and and what is displayed and things like that, you do always have to be careful, of course. But they Pose is doing a good job of representation, and specifically also the folks that are representing. So actually having, trans actors and actresses holding those roles, and Pose actually looks for folks that are in the ballroom scene. So a lot of the folks that you are seeing on there do actually participate in the ballroom scene. Um, they even have like their judges, their panels and things like that that they have. Um, Even some of like their special guests and things are actual special guests that are how legendary. So not just people that are part of a house, but legendary house members. And legendary meaning they have been in that house for a long, long time, and they have to do with key roles of how the house runs and things like that. Folks that identify as father or grandfather and things like that, mother, grandmother, things like that, for the house. And so yes. Also, a lot of their scenarios too are true. Um, doesn't mean that it's 100% accurate, but there are things that happen in Pose that really truly do happen in real life. The sex work is true. The drug involvement is true. Um, and again, some of it also remembering the time period for Pose as well, is playing a role. So some of those things may not be as heavy, nowadays. Some things may be way more heavy compared to back in the day and things like that. So again, yes, but no. And that's again for anything that has to go with media and trans representation in general. And I guess like let me speak on that for a second too, is that trans representation in media, yes, it's getting better, but it's nowhere near perfect and it's nowhere near there at all. And so you do have to really ask questions on some of these things that are really outside of Pose, that are created not by trans writers or don't involve actual trans talent and things like that, because it may not be portrayed correctly. I also want to touch on too, like Law and Order. SVU did a really good job too with several times that they involved a trans scene and had trans actors and actresses as well. They did a very good job on what their representation was. They even asked the actors and actresses as well too, is this accurate? Should we change some things? And that's what we look for, um, in my industry, in the media and things like that, as management. Are they asking those questions? Are they trying to just cross-examine and make sure that it's being represented properly before they just put this out there to the world? Again, Law and Order is a show that you may not watch it, but if someone said it, you're like, oh yeah, I know that's been a show that's been around for forever, and things like that. And so for them to do that, and make sure that it was as accurate as possible for that scene and that scenario and things like that, that right there is showing that they care. Although no one wants any of those scenes to happen to anyone, but like I said, just being able to display something properly and being represented properly really does matter and change the outlook on things.
And I would still welcome other questions, so bring them on in. I do have two more though. So one is harder, one is very easy. So let's start with a harder one
Sure.
until we see another one. So right now we are seeing a lot of media attention on Black trans women, and which is really important and it's really vital. And I know that sometimes Black trans men feel really isolated and left out of conversations. And so, if somebody is a Black trans man and really wants to connect with other Black trans men, where and how can folks do that? And maybe that's not a question that you want to answer, but like, I think that sometimes people feel kind of outside of that realm, that bubble.
Yes. And it is true. Our Black trans women are very vocal. That's honestly what it is. They will make their way. Whereas Black trans men are a little bit quieter, and will kind of step back. And that is why you don't usually see as much. Also, another thing with that is the way that the murder rate is, and the way that those stats are. They have every reason to be as vocal as they are, and they are doing the best that they can of trying to uplift the men and the Black trans men, specifically. With that, a lot of times it is a little bit harder for them to find us that want to talk about it or share and things like that, and that's what us as a community we need to work on. And Where you can go, again, the Black Trans Advocacy Coalition, Black Trans Men Inc., which is part of the coalition, is definitely somewhere you can go. Reaching out to organizations like Forge that have the connections and partnerships with other trans masculine organizations, you're going to want to reach out to. You can reach out to me specifically. You can reach out to my foundation, the Diff Inc. I can put that in the chat box here. Um, you can also go on Facebook and simply, type in Black trans men, and you'll see a couple of different groups that pop up. Um, you can look for hashtags. We're in a day and age now where hashtags are really a thing and can help you find different things. It's a way of searching, and type it in and see about those influencers that might be able to pop up. And again, like I would say about anything, still be careful. Look how they're posting. Are they posting positive? Are they posting negative? Watch out for some fake accounts and things like that. I am very lucky to have never had a fake account. May I put that out there? I am very lucky. But there are a lot of different fake accounts. You will be surprised how many influencers will respond back. A lot of people are afraid and shy and think that we won't. But we realistically know what this looks like. We know where we were sitting 10 years ago, 5 years ago, and, in the same shoes, wanting to type in that little DM and ask, that question. And there's also a lot of times, like here in Wisconsin with Health Connections, for example, Health Connections Inc., which is a health clinic here. They have a lot of connections as well, either to people or organizations, that they could give you resources to as well. So honestly, it's really just not being afraid to just kind of ask. And again, doing research and searching around, kind of what I was explaining to the previous question beforehand. But a lot of it, is, and I'm being very honest and realistic, is there's not a lot of groups specifically for Black trans men. There's a lot of groups for like Black trans in general, or Black trans women or trans men as a whole. But there's very little. And again, that's kind of where I was coming in with having a conglomerate firm, because every time I was creating a new business, it was simply because that aspect was missing, for the Black trans masculine community specifically. If you look up my original name, it was called I Am Here, I Am He, and it was specifically creating space for Black trans men. But yeah, if you look at my stuff now that I've rebranded and all of this other stuff, you'll still see, though, almost somewhere in a description, it will say that we specifically are focused on helping Black trans men. Doesn't mean, again, we won't help anyone, but I like to emphasize that because I want people to know when they click on my site that, you can ask, where can I find this or that, specifically for me being a Black trans man.
Cool. So two questions. So one in the chat, which is, how did you get into renovations, which is a great part of that conglomerate, I'm guessing. So how did you get into renovations?
So renovations came from, so like I said, as I moved from modeling and marketing and branding is kind of what I was starting to do, because I had to literally brand myself to be able to be the face of my company and to pull that representation. I then started doing more entrepreneurial work, creating mini brands, like I said, either selling them off or they just didn't work. I just one day was like, I don't do anything in construction, but I know there's a lot of, here we go, Black trans men that do construction or know that area in that field. How can I get them hired? How can I hire them? How can I change that economic status that the Black trans community falls under? And I started doing my research. I started seeing what I needed to do to get licensed here in the state of Wisconsin, to become a contractor, to pull vendors, to hire and things like that. And now here we are. When COVID first started, it was supposed to happen like 6 months later, but I said, you know what? I'm going to just do it. I took my entrepreneur's leap of faith and I created Gauthier Franklin Renovations. And I now am one of, I think, from what I know being disclosed out, the only Black trans man that owns a construction company in the state of Wisconsin.
Way cool. That is really fantastic. So I know that people will probably want to know where they can find you, how they can find you. So I'm going to put in a little bit of where I know people can find you.
Perfect.
Are there other places that people can find you other than Instagram, your couple of websites, American America in Transition? Where else can people find you?
Yeah, so I'm pretty much on every platform. I try to keep everything to my name. So either Dezjorn or Dezjorn Gauthier or Dezjorn International. But pretty much everything is Dezjorn. I'm literally the only person with my name. So once you start typing it in, I'm probably the only person that will pop up with that. So you can find me there. I always tell people that my website is always a 100% safe spot to find if anything has changed or updated. You can get like tour schedules and things like that. You can do bookings there as well. So if you want me to come to your organization, or if you're in school and you want me to come speak at your school, university, high school, or anything like that in between, that's where you could do all of that. And it's directly to my email address and all of my 1,000 other email addresses. So you can go ahead and find me there. I'm also going to put in what my corporate number is, because you also can text the number. And sometimes there's another 7 in there. That's not correct. Sorry. I got this cute little thing that helps my keyboard stay clean, and it's terrible because I end up misspelling everything. But anyways, you can text the number. I have a lot of youth that usually text the number because texting is their thing. That's within for them. But even if you just feel, some type of way, you want to vent, you just need to say something, you have questions or whatever it may be, you can go ahead and text it, and you can ask for me specifically. All of my staff know that everything should be confidential. You'd never have to disclose who you are or why. You could just simply say, I'm having a bad day. My mom, said something about me being trans again today, and I just need to know that somebody loves me, or whatever. It's just kind of not a hotline, but it's a space that I want to always keep open for my community, no matter what, to be able to say something. or anything like that. Also, you can just simply find out information from texting that number too. So if you're having trouble finding me on any platform and you want to know if I am on that platform, you can just simply text and ask as well. But yeah, I'm pretty much on every platform, like literally everything except for Snapchat. I feel like I kind of outgrew Snapchat. But rather than that, I am pretty much on everything: LinkedIn, Twitter, Clubhouse. I think there's some other new stuff that is coming out. I mean, pretty much as a marketing and social media management, because I have a wing in my conglomerate for that too. I stay pretty up to date on these different platforms and things like that. So yeah, you can find me pretty much everywhere.
Cool. And I know on Instagram you're like, this fantastic, like always pushing stuff out. So it's pretty darn cool to watch how much stuff and how much action you got going
Well,
on.
thank
So
you.
that's very cool. So as we wrap up today, do you wanna close with anything? Do you have any last parting thoughts that you'd like to share before we wrap up?
Yeah, of course. I mean, first off, I want to just thank everybody that that came, and even those that maybe had to leave early and things like that. It really does matter a lot to me when I can be able to hold these spaces and not just share about myself, but see what questions everyone has, because then I kind of know what areas I want to still talk on, or what areas need to be more addressed and things like that. And kind of what I said earlier, just always remember to be you. You are loved. I love you. I do care. Like I said, your life does matter to me. Inbox me. I do reply. I definitely try to help. And if I can't help, I always try to find someone that can, that is reliable for you. And ultimately, I want to just really, if my youth that might be on here listening, like I said earlier, you all are changing the world, and I do what I do for you all because at some point I am going to be elderly and you are going to have to take care of me. And so I want to make sure that I take care of you all now, until you can get to that point where it's time for you to take care of me. And we can only look out for each other. We really only have each other. I know that we all have our different ways and things like that, but we have to literally be here for each other, especially now as a country we go through this healing period from last year. And let's get back out there and really show the world who we are as a trans community. I can't wait until Pride rolls back around, when our Trans Day of Visibility, all of that stuff that we did as a community. And let's really show them this year or next year, whenever we can start gathering again, how awesome we are as a group, and that we are just like anyone else.
Cool. That is a perfect way to end. I really want to thank you for spending an hour and a half of your life with us and sharing stuff that it sounds like you haven't had the opportunity to share in this format before. So it's really cool to hear where you've been and how you've been and how you've gotten to this spot, which is really, really fantastic to kind of have a more holistic story. So I really appreciate you being here and sharing so much about who you are and the path of how you've gotten to where you are and all of the great things that are going to come ahead for you and all of your what did you call them behind you? I was thinking about little ducklings, but all of the
That works too, though. I think I call them my little trans babies.
little trans babies, yeah. So the little trans babies, the little ducklings, are really. It's really good that they have you as the lead duck. Are you a duck? I don't want to call you a duck, but
So I a secret, here's another exclusive. I secretly really love ducks. Like I have a whole collection of rubber ducks that I have been collecting like since I was like 12. So yes, I am a duck, ironically.
cool. So now we know what to get you for your birthday and for Christmas. We will get you ducks. So I am glad to have you as the duck that has little babies that are following. And I'm so glad again that you spent this afternoon with us and that you are always available to folks in our community, and that is really fantastic. So
Thank you.
as we wrap up today, when we close out, there will be an evaluation, and Forge really cares about your experience and what you'd like to see in the future. So if you have a minute, please take just literally a minute to fill out the evaluation, and feel free to leave a comment in the chat for Dezjorn about like how fantastic he is, and we'll leave the chat open for a few minutes as we exit today. So thank you for being here, everybody. Thank you, Dezjorn. Thank you to our ASL folks, who we love, and we'll see you in a couple of weeks. Cool. Thanks, everybody.